From Fei Xiao's character introduction, we learn that the Yao Qing general is afflicted with something called moon rage. It is said that if she's going all out in hunting down the abominations of abundance, then the only enemy she has left would be herself. And that's an interesting statement because instead of the Foxian, moon rage is a term that is closely related to the Borizin. That statement also implies that this affliction will eventually turn Fei Xiao into an abomination herself if she pushes herself further in her duty as a Shanzhou general. This was something that I briefly discussed in another video, and I think that is exactly what is going to happen in the next patch. But before we go there, let's start from the beginning. What is moon rage? From a scroll found at the Seat of Divine Foresight, Borizins are said to have the greatest healing ability among the long-life species. They are considered as part of the denizens of abundance, or simply the abominations of abundance, because unlike the Shanzhou people who eventually see Yao Shu's blessing as a curse, the Borizin embrace this blessing, believing that Yao Shu only blesses the strong. They're also known to be able to shapeshift, an ability they call Moon Rage, or Moon Madness if you have farm materials for destruction characters between patch 2.0 and 2.2. However, despite being defined as a shape-shifting ability, it doesn't mean that they can transform themselves into another person or species. As seen during the prison break in 2.4 quest, Moktok said that they took some pills to get themselves looking like Foxians. This ability is more like a body deformation that is caused by hyperplasia of their bone and muscle structure, which leads to deformations such as protruded snout and jawline and twisted limbs. However, thanks to the rapid healing ability, these deformations will always eventually be restored. Hulei, that we saw broke free from the Luofu shackling prison, is a former leader of the Borizin. In Prisoner in Deep Confinement Relic set, it is noted that when he was under the influence of moon rage, sharp bone spikes would pierce through his body, but it barely affected him. Children of the Borizin who carry moon madness in them had broken through the limitation of flesh and blood. Their bodies erupted and deformed, yet no longer able to feel pain or fear. Now, if we bring this term to the context of the Borizin gameplay, Moon Rage is basically a buff that increases the Borizin speed by 30%. This buff is stated to be unremovable, but from my recent MLC run, I learned that it was actually removable. You just need to break their toughness. Another thing that I noticed is that when they're in this Moon Rage state, their eyes would glow red. And you know who else has glowing red eyes? Fei Xiao. Dan Shu, a former chief alchemist of the Alchemy Commission, said that the Borizin are genetically similar to the Foxian from the Shanzhou Yaoqing. It is believed to be the case because the Cloud Knights from that ship, specifically their elite subunit called the Verdant Knights, often rescue worlds ruled by the Borizin. The Borizin, worshipping the concept of a strong body, sees the Foxian to be below them despite their common ancestry. They would enslave the Foxian, make them cannon fodder, and vanguards in battle. So, you know, when Hulei expressed his disgust of Moktok's Foxian disguise, this is what he was referring to. They're basically a race of ruthless and racist humanoid wolf. It is also heavily implied that the Borizin does not stop at enslaving the Foxian and making them human shields, because Foxians born in a world ruled by the Borizin are said to have mixed bloodlines and occasionally produce individuals with atavistic mutation. Fei Xiao is a Foxian born in one of those worlds. The previous general of the Yao Qing, General Jue Ju, was the one who saved Fei Xiao from her homeworld and eventually took her under her wing. Now, atavistic mutation is the reappearance of ancestral traits in individuals way down the ancestry line. Something that should have been lost through evolution reappears in the modern-day version of that species. Think of horses with extra toes instead of the hoof toes that we are familiar with. In a Foxian, perhaps the mutation is the Moon Rage itself. After all, they share a common ancestor with the Borizin. Perhaps they used to be able to shapeshift as well, constantly mutating and transforming like the Borizin did, but eventually lost it after their diverging path. Even the Wind-Soaring Waterless Relic set notes that the Foxians saved from worlds ruled by the Borizin possess strength and speed comparable to the Borizin. And have I mentioned that the gameplay version of Moon Rage basically increases the Borizin speed? This power, however, comes at the price of their life and sanity. Once the Foxian's will is engulfed by rage, they will descend into bloodthirsty monsters. Now, if this sounds much like Mars Struck to you, and yes, you are wondering whether Moon Rage is the Foxian and Borizin equivalent of Mars Struck, well, I don't have the answer to that. Although interestingly, the Yao Shu's blessing on the Shanzhou Yaoqing is in fact a moon. Strange coincidence. So Fei Xiao is afflicted with Moonrage, a minor inconvenience to the Borizin thanks to their healing ability, but a ticking bomb to Fei Xiao. A ticking bomb that is likely going to explode in 2.5 because those red glowing eyes spell nothing but danger to me. So here's the thing about Star Rail live streams and spilling the tea about upcoming friendly matches with playable characters. They lie. Remember what they said when they revealed about the Aventurine boss fight in 2.1 livestream? They said we were going to have a friendly match with him. But did we? Aventurine was going all out, threatening the life of everyone in a dreamscape. Sure, the threatening part was a bluff because nobody could die in a dreamscape thanks to Enna the Order, but boy did he go all out on the crew. He was ready to bring about total destruction to the dreamscape if it meant he could get Ekron to reveal her Emanator's power. It was all or nothing. So when they said Fei Xiao was going to have a friendly match with us in the next patch, I just knew that was not the whole truth. We briefly saw Fei Xiao's eyes glowing red in the trailer, similarly to how the in-game Borizin's eye would be when they have the Moonrage buff. The Flowing Aureus, the spirit that was bestowed by Lan upon Fei Xiao, was engulfed in this red aura all over its green body, and they called it Ecliptic Inner Beast. That's funny because we were just talking about what the Foxian would be once they're consumed by rage, weren't we? When their will was burned to embers by rage, they would descend into bloodthirsty monsters. In short, I don't think the fight with Fei Xiao will simply be a cute friendly match with a friend. Something would trigger Fei Xiao's Moonrage and she would lose her control over it, bringing out the inner beast within her. Since the only way to remove the Moonrage buff is by breaking the Borizin's toughness, perhaps the only way to get Fei Xiao out of her Moonrage state is also by defeating her, hence the friendly match. In the trailer, we also heard General Huaiyan saying that the Merlin's Claw had betrayed the Alliance. Perhaps it has something to do with that as well. I mean, one of the 10 unpardonable sins is a crime of violently taking the lives of fellow Shanzhou people. If Fei Xiao went out of control in the middle of the Warden's festival, harming the Shanzhou people in the process, wouldn't that count as violently taking the lives of fellow Shanzhou people? Another way this could go perhaps has something to do with Jiao Chou's hidden agenda of visiting Hulei in the prison. While Moonrage in Borizins is a minor inconvenience that is easily restored by the rapid healing ability, Fei Xiao seems to be on the other end of the pain scale. For the Borizin, Moonrage comes in the form of bone and muscle deformation. Meanwhile, according to Jiao Chou's note, Fei Xiao is suffering from irregular qi and blood circulation, poor if not declining eyesight, and myolysis and muscular calcification, among many others. Jiao Chou also noted that Fei Xiao had exerted herself, while the toxins buildup in her body had not been addressed, leading to even more problems. The Borizin's rapid healing ability sounds very good at this point, not gonna lie. In the same note, Jiao Chou listed down the recipes for food that Fei Xiao needed to consume in order to improve her health, but none was suggested to be the cure that could uproot the main source of her illness. Fei Xiao even paid Bailu a visit in hopes that the healer lady would be able to cure her. Bailu couldn't and suggested Fei Xiao to enjoy lots of delicious food instead. Jiao Chou, on the other hand, is determined to find a cure. He specifically came out of retirement so that he could be Fei Xiao's doctor. And personally, I think there is a beautiful irony in this partnership between the general and the doctor. On one hand, we have Fei Xiao who is eager for battle and pretty much doomed to be consumed by her illness. On the other, we have Jiao Chou who has been driven to his nihilistic view of healing. What is the point of healing soldiers if they're just gonna be sent back to the battlefield and die, he asked. But despite that nihilistic view, he agreed to come out of retirement so that he could slow down Fei Xiao's declining health. Despite her doom end, Fei Xiao continued to hunt down the abominations of abundance, worsening her condition, and hired Jiao Chou so that he could keep the illness at bay so that she could hunt down the abomination just a bit more before she no longer could. And I suppose that's what Jiao Chou's master meant when he said he wanted the general to heal Jiao Chou's despondent heart. Why bother healing if they're gonna die anyway should not be a question to begin with. That's like asking, why eat if you're just gonna be hungry again? Now, as much as Fei Xiao is determined to wipe out the abominations in her limited lifespan, Jiao Chou is determined to cure her, if his voice line about Fei Xiao is anything to go by. During his visit to see Hulei and hopefully transport him out of Luofu, it was revealed that he wanted to get a sample of Hulei's toxin in hopes of discovering a cure. Sounds reasonable. Fei Xiao's Moonrage originated from her Foxian and Borizin mixed bloodline after all. If Jiao Chou has exhausted all kinds of medications on Fei Xiao and none has worked, perhaps the answer lies in the other half of that mixed bloodline, particularly in Hulei that is basically unkillable despite having been deprived of food for hundreds of years. In his trailer, it was heavily implied that the meat Jiao Zhou served Bai Luo and Su Shang was Berezin meat. One could say it was a fun little reference to Hannibal Lecter, but the Foxian's deepest desire is to one day teach the hunters the fear of being hunted. I mean, some Berezins are known to have a tradition that allows them to eat the flesh of other races, Foxians included. Perhaps in a twisted the hunter becomes the hunted kind of scenario, assuming that Jiao Zhou did cook and eat Berezin meat is not too wild of an idea to think of. Perhaps part of his goal of finding a cure for Fei Xiao involves some experiments on Hu Lei, something that could be illegal to do. Because if it's not illegal, unless there is really no cure at all, why don't the Xianzhou people have a cure for Moonrage already? I mean, the alliance between the Xianzhou and the Foxian was formed 7 centuries ago. Surely they have known about the rare occurrence of Moonrage and some Foxians, right? Which could lead to the whole Merlin's Claw you have betrayed the alliance statement. Jiao Zhou is Fei Xiao's doctor. If Fei Xiao learned of what Jiao Zhou was planning to do, she might try to cover for him and take the blame. Well, I think I have rambled enough. One topic that I will not be touching upon now is the so-called death flag implied in Fei Xiao's recent trailer, because I don't think she will die anytime soon. Being consumed by Moonrage is the end that she cannot escape, yes, but it doesn't mean that death will come knocking on her door tomorrow. We have Jingliu who got Mars-stricken and then come back from it. Who's to say that when Fei Xiao is consumed by her inner monster, she would lose the willpower to overcome it? Plus, we're going to fight her in the next patch and break her toughness. Surely that would end her Moonrage state, right? Moonrage is a terrible ending that looms over her life for sure, but the general of the Yaoqing is still here right now. Just like the general who couldn't care less about her declining health, as well as to answer Jiao Zhou's question, why don't we simply enjoy every moment with her without a single care in the world so that when the inevitable comes, we won't have any regret? Alrighty, it couldn't get any cheesier than that, so now I will be taking my leave. Thank you for sticking around till the end. Like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next one.